I'm Alan Thorpe.
And I'm David Rogers, and together we host the WeatherPod.
In this special series on artificial intelligence, we invite leading experts to reveal how AI is being used across all sectors of the global weather enterprise.
We want to find out how business, the public sector and academia are using AI. Can it help improve the accuracy and quality of weather and climate information?
Can it help to make weather and climate information more useful and usable across a range of critical activities that are impacted by weather and climate?
There are many claims being made about AI, but what is its real value when it comes to helping business and society meet the growing climate challenge?
In this episode of the WeatherPod, we've invited Christof Apenzeller to join our ongoing discussion about the role of AI in weather forecasting. Till recently, Christof was the Director General of the Federal Office of Meteorology and Climatology, the Swiss National Meteorological Weather Service, otherwise known as MeteoSwiss. Given Switzerland's mountainous location, MeteoSwiss is a critical part of the country's infrastructure, providing a wide range of weather and climate-related services to the country's public, private and academic sectors, not to mention the international community. Among the topics we discussed was the fact that a decade ago, MeteoSwiss was pioneer in the use of graphical processing units, or GPUs, to run its numerical weather prediction model, an exercise which made possible an ensemble system with 1 kilometer resolution in 2016. We also discussed the fantastic smartphone app MeteoSwiss has developed. In our view, this is a fantastic piece of technology which provides a sense of getting real-time information from a forecast. Looking ahead, Christof spoke of the huge growth in public demand for weather information compared to 10 or 20 years ago, and the key role AI might play in enabling a rapid response to these requirements. One example might be providing personalized weather forecasts delivered right to your smartphone, which take account of key personal details such as disabilities. So, welcome to the WeatherPod, Christof.
Yeah, welcome, Christof. Great to have you on the show.
Welcome, Alan and David.
So, to get started, Christof, you've recently stepped down as Director General of MeteoSwiss, the Federal Office of Meteorology and Climatology, Switzerland's National Meteorological Service. And so by way of introduction, could you tell us a little bit about your personal journey to becoming the Director General, describing maybe MeteoSwiss, your role in MeteoSwiss and major activities?
Yeah, I mean, before I started to work at MeteoSwiss, I had like a classical career in the university range. So I think I entered MeteoSwiss around 2000, so that's quite a while ago. And my first part of the career there was actually setting up a climate service and bringing like all the new tasks that are needed in terms of climate change. And I think it was roughly in 2014 when I entered into the board of MeteoSwiss and took over the responsibility for the forecasting part as well, for the operational forecasting, but also for the development and the numerical modeling, still responsible for the climate. And so, yeah, I was able to somehow shape a little bit how this development, how the development at MeteoSwiss worked. And the last few years I have been director, so that added up then also the observational part, and in particular the part, if you like, how can you arrange the funding that you need to do things. And yeah, and now I retired.
So Christof, you said you moved from academia into MeteoSwiss in around 2000. That's always an interesting transition. Why did you make that change?
Yeah, I mean, Switzerland is not such a big country, or so that is basically. I was interested in having a family. I was interested to having like a little bit more secured future, and staying in the academic, I would have meant to left Switzerland, and that my wife wasn't really happy about that. So it was a decision to go into something that is usable for the society and that uses all the knowledge that I acquired during my university career.
Yeah. Great.
Maybe
So,
maybe I repeat one of the sentences, because I think one of my driver to go to MeteoSwiss was that I wanted to do something that has impact in the society, and it turned out that the Met Service is a fantastic place to do that. So you can really apply science into real products and into real decision making.
great. Let's move on. In this series of the WeatherPod, we are, as you know, we're discussing the role and impact of AI and machine learning on the global weather enterprise. And we've covered various aspects, and it's clear that AI is seen as disrupting many aspects of society. But of course, as well, it's disrupting the meteorological landscape. So first of all, in general terms, how do you view these developments in terms of their impact on meteorology as a whole?
Yeah, I think in the last very few years, I think it's really clear that it accelerated the development in the meteorology enormously, and it also changed the landscape, how developments work. Maybe we come back later to that. But I think at the same time, it's important to note that meteorology, weather service, they were in a process of change anyway. So in a certain sense, ML has added up and has accelerated this change, but many of the change is the automatization, using more numerical models, moving away from more manual work to automatic work. They have been already started without the recent very fast development. And the second point, I think, which is important, I'm looking back now to MeteoSwiss, is using machine learning is not new in the Met service. So we have one actually a product that still runs, and it started in 1999, so just a little bit before I came. And one of my first work was also using that ML network, and so it's not completely new. So it has been used in meteorology, but of course, what has happened in the last very few years, it has accelerated dramatically.
And in which sort of can you sort of characterize what impact in general it has? I mean, it's been used in various ways, but what do you think the most important way in which it's having an impact?
Yeah, I think looking now to the Met Service. Okay, so I don't know general meteorology, that is quite a large field, but my experience is more really looking into an operational Met Service, and I think the first thing to note is that the ML will, or KI, I mean, it will change the entire value chain. Okay, so it's not only in the forecasting part where a lot of activity is currently going on and is dominating quite a lot because it's attractive and it has generated many global headlines, but it changes the way how we do observation. It changes the way how we do the operational service for the weather forecaster at the desk, how we translate our things, how we organize, how we program. So in a sense, for a Met service, it's really changing the entire value chain, and it's rearranging a little bit how we do the work.
Could you be a sort of bit more specific and say how is it being built into operations within MeteoSwiss?
So the ML, I mean, maybe one point that I was adding before that I was saying, so we have been under technology development that changed the value chain of a Met service quite a while, or since many years. And one thing that is very interesting is also to look how has the computer power, and in particular GPUs, how have they changed the Met services? And for us, it was really interesting because we were one of the first Met service that was trying to use GPUs for running the numerical weather prediction model. And I think this was a project that started also something in 2012. We started to work together with ETH on using GPUs for running our numerical limited area model, the COSMO. And we were successful in doing that in 2016. So we were the first Met service in the world that was running a numerical weather prediction model, I mean a physical model on GPU. But the advantage to run it on GPU at that time was that GPU were much cheaper than a CPU, and it allowed us a quantum jump in resolution and speed. So we were able to run an ensemble system with 1 kilometer in 2016. And to be honest, we still run a 1 kilometer system So it was a jump that was dramatically triggered by the GPU development. And I guess a lot of the ML that we are seeing today is also triggered by the technologically available GPU power. So it's a lot about computer power that you can use, of course, together with many other things, and particularly together with the data. So from that point of view, MeteoSwiss was very, very early in using GPU. That was a good starting point for us when the ML world came, because many had problems having access to GPUs. We didn't have, because our model was with GPU already running. On the other hand, you still need a lot of computer power to do machine learning forecasting.
Was this computer
you've contributed to is providing open source online tools using AI? Could you elaborate a bit on those? I know you have something called rainforest and peak weather, and these tools seem to be useful for others to use also.
Yeah, that is true, and that has something to do with what is really the role of MeteoSwiss. Are we more a private weather service that is somehow has the goal to generate income, or are we a public weather service? And we clearly decided, even we were able by law, we could be more active in the commercial part. But we decided, and our politicians in particular decided, that they want to have a public weather service. And for us, that also meant that our tools and our software that we are going to develop, it will be open source. And that means that we are more working and trying to get and build a community that can use our software as well. And that we, of course, are involved in using with others together to develop that. I mean, the second important point for MeteoSwiss was, of course, the decision to go really open data with all our data. And that is, of course, a fantastic source for many, many ML developments. And you have living in Switzerland in the Alpine region, you have a lot of small-scale phenomena which are a fantastic test bed to test whether really your model that you have developed more on a global scale actually work on a regional one. And if you think about, we had it 2 years ago, I mean, they are really dramatic, these events. Okay, so they are huge damages and also fatalities. And then 2 years ago, 8 people died just from a summer thunderstorm event. And I think these is huge challenges for the ML modeling as well.
Could I just go back just for a second? You were talking about your GPU usage so early. Was this based on a computer that MeteoSwiss owned itself, or did you use other computing resources?
So, I mean, being in Switzerland is a rather small country, okay, but we have fantastic university very nearby. That is the ETH, and this is the Swiss Federal Institute for Technology, and we have a very close collaboration. Actually, I was also involved there in teaching. And that allowed us in particular to work closely together with them. So without them and without their supercomputing center, we would not have been able to do that. And we run on the same computer as the academia is running. So we are not buying our own GPU machine. So we buy the machine together with the ETH, and we have the competence from the high performance computing people, and in fact also from NVIDIA. I mean, NVIDIA was helping a lot that our model was running stable on the GPU machine at that time. And I think this is a very interesting collaboration, because the academia is more on speed and new ideas, and we, of course, are more on generating a stable forecast and what happens if the machine is breaking down. And these new machines, they are not completely stable. I mean, you need to do a lot, and we have a second machine now, and we got a lot of help from the ETH and from the NVIDIA people to really build a machine that you can use for operational purposes. And that's a huge difference to research applications.
I mean, I think that's really interesting, that connection. You mentioned, again, just very briefly to follow up on this GPU question, you mentioned that at the time, they were very cheap. Of course, we now know they're really expensive, really, really expensive. So is that an issue? Is that a problem for us?
Of course, this is an issue. I mean, So I mean, we are a Met service, okay? So we are governmental driven, and politics is somehow saying how much budget is available for MeteoSwiss, and essentially, I mean, we are in pressure as many others in Europe due to the global developments. So that means we would have access to more GPU, but we don't have the resource to pay it. Okay, so I think that for us it's clear. So we have to. Of course, this collaboration with the ETH, it's not free for us. Okay, so we are funding our activity, we are funding what we need, and our budget is limited, and this is one of the issues for learning. Maybe we come afterwards to that. So we are in the process of developing a local ML-driven forecast, but for that you need data to learn it, and that in terms needs a lot of GPU, and that is a question of budget, whether we are able to do it or not.
So if I may ask an economics question for a moment, in terms of the fact that GPUs are more expensive now, does that mean when you buy your computing cycles from ETH, they're more expensive now?
That's true, yeah. So we buy like in blocks, like new machines. So we buy an entire for the next phase. And for example, we were not able to increase the resolution of our operational models because we were not able to buy the necessary GPUs. So it is a so we got so I mean before this big chat, we were really able to increase the quality dramatically of our forecast. And now it's somehow more, can we keep it and can we extend, maybe run a couple of more members? But the jumps in quality, they are not as before.
So is that, I'm going to try and put words in your mouth here, but does that mean that actually ML has been a bad thing for us because you've been pushed onto the GPU track, which is now turning out to be really expensive?
I know what you want to ask, and the answer is clearly no, because I think the point that we've learned in moving our numerical model towards the GPU architecture, towards a different architecture, high performance computing architecture, it was necessary to build up all this collaboration with ETH and with NVIDIA and the experts, and this has not stopped. So this has started and has continued to develop, and we are now we have changed from Cosmo to the Icon model as together with the German Weather Service, and we have a huge project with the German Weather Service, but in particular with the ETH partners, and these are partners from the IT department, where we really try to introduce a more modular, more modern software into our numerical model, and I think the benefit that you have from this development is huge. Even the particular point of GPU, of course, it is a lot of work to rewrite your model that it works on GPU, and this time it was not that we benefited like the first time. You can also argue that other weather services which haven't done that yet, they may still have a jump there, but for us the jump has been realized in 2016, and on the other hand, this was a fantastic jump. I mean, this was very worldwide recognized, and for us it was fantastic. I mean, we were immediately able to have a high resolution model over Switzerland that was much better in quality.
Do you see there's even greater potential with your partnerships with ETH and others, that as the whole community is utilizing the technology more and more, that there will actually be, the resource may grow simply because there's many customers for it from within the academic community and elsewhere? Will that be helpful?
I think this is not only helpful, I think in the end it is necessary. I think it will not be, we as a community now, as the community of the Met service in Europe, so we will not be able to do all these developments ourselves, at least for all the mid-sized Met service as MeteoSwiss is. I mean, maybe it's for UK Met Office and DWD, it's a little bit different because they have a different size of collaborators involved, a different size of budget that they can use. But I think one of the things, and that is actually very interesting from the ML development as well. So it is, if you think about the numerical modeling consortia that existed in Europe, so you had the one around France, you had the one around UK Met Office, and the one around the DWD. And they were somehow quite a little bit separated, but it was always difficult to say, yeah, can we join into one particular consortium? Nobody wanted to do that because everybody was convinced about its own model setup. And the ML has somehow given the opportunity to rethink that on a much more European scale. So we had together with ECMWF, we have it's called a pilot project, the ML pilot project. And it's independent from the consortia. People work together and try to develop an ML version of a regional model in Europe. And I think for me, one of the most impressive thing was to say that how can we arrange the weather service that they use the same basic structure, and it's like the anemoi is one of these things that all the Met service decide, let's do it with the same framework, and that generates a lot of synergies. And I think in the end we need these synergies in order to in order to use ML modeling for our customers, for our population. Okay, so the role of the public weather service is necessary, and it needs the knowledge how to deal with the ML and use the ML for the benefit for the public.
So you've mentioned already that you're dealing with, and we've just been talking about regional and localized forecasts. And I know that MeteoSwiss is working on what could be called highly localized, seamless forecasting systems. Can you tell us a little bit about the motivation of that, and how localized is highly localized, and how do you see the users utilizing this sort of information?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe you know our app. So we were on our app, we had a very nice animation of the radar image, which is actually a forecast. So which uses the radar and uses then the statistical methods together with output from the numerical model in order to do a prediction of the precipitation in Switzerland for the next, let's say, 6 hours. And this is this nowcasting product, which is also including, of course, some numerical model output. And I think there we had a lot of development, and this is something that is key for the security, because it's the thunderstorms in the summer which are very can be very dangerous, and many people look to the app in order to know whether there will be thunderstorms in the afternoon or not. And there, of course, is a field to use machine learning, which is fantastic because it's data driven from the statistical part, and you need to have a seamless go into then the numerical model that you can do with ML as well. And so we have invested now quite a lot in replacing it's called now PRESID. This is a system which is based on statistics and radar, and which is completely ML based now. And there it's a high resolution. It is particularly used for thunderstorm warning, and it runs in a pre-operational setup. But so it uses radar and blizzards, but it's not yet using fully automatic or integrated the numerical model. But we are thinking about that the ML has the potential to fill this gap between the nowcasting part and the very short-range numerical weather prediction part in a rather smooth way.
And when you talk about local, what kind of resolutions are we talking about?
So there we are still in 1 kilometer resolution, but the point is we want to have an automatic thunderstorm warning out of it. And the automatic thunderstorm warning is then in the app, it sends you a push-up which is based on the zip code of Switzerland. Okay, so it's basically in which zip code are you, and then you get a warning, hey, wait, in the next 20 minutes there will be huge thunderstorms. And of course, we started initially, quite a while ago, we started to do that editing by a forecaster as well. But this is just almost impossible from the speed that you need, okay, because a lot is about how can you use this 20-minute, half an hour forecast quality that you have, and the idea is, I hope next summer, but I'm not the director anymore, but the idea was that next summer we can go operational with this new system, which is completely ML based.
Can I just jump in with an endorsement of the MeteoSwiss app, since I'm a resident of Switzerland? It's actually fantastic, and there are a couple of things worth mentioning, and also it's a question. It updates very, very frequently, so you are really feel you have the sense of real-time information from the forecast. And the blend, as you've mentioned already, the blend of the radar and the radar into a forecasting tool is fantastic, because the fact you can scroll it and basically see what's going to happen next, and it seems seamless to go from the observation to the forecast. And as I say, as a user, it's better than I've ever seen anywhere, frankly. And it's also extremely good at precipitation forecasting. And given our complex terrain, it's surprising how good it actually is. Can you just elaborate a little bit about how the forecast, the actual forecast process that goes into it? Because I think that's also very, very interesting to understand a little bit more about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's extremely challenging, okay, because you have the mountains as well. So that means if you use a classical statistical system, so it will not know where the mountains are, and it will not know how all the thunderstorms are displaced and blocked by the topography. And I think one of the things that I'm very proud of as well of that system, and we invested a lot in that system as MeteoSwiss. But one of the key is how is the data flow organized? And I think this is interesting to know as well from the machine learning point of view. So machine learning in an academic sense is somehow bringing a super routine out and having a really good forecast quality. But in an operational sense, it needs to run with all the data, and it needs to be able to run even one data source is not coming in. And that in particular means, for example, that a system that maybe have a better quality that uses an additional data source, but it's less reliable. So then for our operational system, we stick to the more simple system, because the more simple system is more reliable, and it can deal also in a situation where additional data sources are missing. And I think this is one of the things with this nowcasting that we do on the radar. So in the moment, it turns out that the system that most likely will go operational is actually only using radar and lightning in the moment. Even we would have other data sources, and the system can include the other data system. But in order to get the stability, in order to have it updated very, very quickly, and in order to have the data speed and all the organization, it turns out that it's actually better to have a little bit a simpler system that runs stable and updates very, very fast, instead of having a more complex system that is more complex to run operational. So the new system that is based on ML only will in the beginning be radar and lightning, and lightning is coming from the satellite. Okay.
So can I just delve a little bit into the technicalities here of the machine learning? I mean, we know that clearly, as the name suggests, the neural network, the model, has to be trained with historical data, and the volume of that data, the amount of data that it can train on, is really important, because obviously the atmosphere has many degrees of freedom, so it produces all sorts of varieties of weather systems all of the time over, well, to be frank, thousands of millions of years. So it's interesting to me that you're using it at very small scale, where perhaps we don't have that many past data sources of detail. You mentioned radar data, but that's only been going for a relatively short time in terms of number of years. So it sort of surprises me in a way that the machine learning can actually produce a model that can, say, extrapolate outside of what it's already seen over the relatively limited training data set. A sort of thunderstorm in a different place or with slightly different characteristics may be a challenge. I don't know if that makes sense, but to me, I can sort of understand on the global scale, there's an awful lot of satellite data, etc., to train global models, global ML models. But how does that work in terms of a really highly localized model?
I mean, you ask a a tricky question. Okay, and of course the data limitation is the key, and in particular if you think about in the mountain region. Okay, so if you think about like a direct observation driven prediction, so it will be a huge challenge whether there will be enough observations in the mountain regions, and I think this is a completely open question. And I'm not really the expert, but for the point that I can say on, so what we've done with the radar data, we've invested a lot in bringing back the old radar data and do quality check and do homogenization on the data. So we had a huge project that was before the ML. Actually, we started to do that because we wanted to have a hail climatology in Switzerland, which hail is quite is a very damaging event. Okay, so in particular, if you think about now solar panels and cars, I mean, we have huge damages from hail, and there wasn't a climatology available. Okay, so and one of the idea was that radar data you can quantify how much hail it is. I mean, at least to get a good overview, and so we were reprocessing, doing a reanalysis of all our radar data as much back as we were able, and we had quite a good radar system in Switzerland. And that is now one of the key for the ML learning. Okay, so nobody knew at that time that we are going to use that for the ML learning. And the other thing I think is another product which has now been key is the reanalysis. And you remember from ECMWF. So we had all this discussion, and many people 10 years ago were asking, why do we need a reanalysis? I was always the one that was saying, I mean, I've worked with reanalysis all my life. So I was the one that was saying, no, we need that. And now it turns out to be almost the most key product that is coming out from the weather service. And here, Switzerland, or me at MeteoSwiss, we are reprocessing our data as well in order to have a high resolution reanalysis. I mean, it's a dynamically driven reanalysis, but we need that reanalysis as long back as possible, because otherwise we don't have data to learn. So the thing that we do in the moment with the model, I mean, with the gridded ML modeling, is really investing money into generating a reanalysis in order to have the data to learn. And this is, I mean, I don't have to explain that here, but ML modeling is very, very cheap, or has a good price in doing operation. But you just move all the money into the learning and into getting all the data. And this is not cheap at all. And of course, as Met service, you're responsible to do the observation in Switzerland, and we've done that since a long time. And we invest a lot in reprocessing the observation, bringing them all into the same grid. And I mean, all the background work that you need to do for the ML modeling. And I think there, the Met service have a huge role in do that in a common framework with common formats in Europe, so that we can exchange the data set. And I'm very proud. So we initiated this EAI. I don't know whether you know that. This is this UMetNet AI project. And it started up very, very quickly. And very, very quickly, we had a lot of members that were participating. And we have a body now which talks about these problems and looks that we use common formats and that we use common frameworks like Anemoy in order to learn the ML models. And this by itself will help us to reach the goal in the end. I think each small Met service by itself, it's just too small to do all the work that is.
How much of the data comes from other sources outside of MeteoSwiss?
Oh, a lot of data come from outside. I mean, we're contributing to the WMO distribution system, but of course, I mean, MeteoSwiss Switzerland observations in Switzerland alone, it's impossible to do a weather forecast. Okay.
But just within Switzerland, I mean, are other agencies, other partners providing data?
So in the meteorology part, we are actually we are really doing most of the work. So we have a close collaboration with our Avalanche Institute concerning snow observations, and then we have some collaboration, of course, with the hydrology more on the precipitation part. But we are actually, I mean, we're quite active, and the meteorological and climatological observation are well organized within MeteoSwiss. So you don't have that. I mean, other meta services have more problem with that, but for us that works quite fine.
It's interesting, Christof. You mentioned, I'm glad you did, the importance of reanalysis in the training of machine learning. But it's sort of introduces a paradox in my mind anyway, because the reanalysis depends upon merging the observations with a physics-based NWP model data, prediction data. So actually the ML model can't exist without the physics-based numerical weather prediction model to create the reanalysis. So there's a kind of relationship, hopefully a symbiotic relationship between the two, but often it's not mentioned that actually we're using a physics-based NWP model to generate, as well as the observations, the reanalysis, and that sometimes frustrates me. I don't know. Does that make sense to you? That sort of comment?
I think I completely understand what you want to say, and for quite a while, I was convinced that it will only work with a reanalysis or with a gridded initial analysis that you can use for the learning, and then the first result popped up on the direct observation-driven forecasts, and they were surprisingly good. And I think it is quite an open question how much of the observation you can use directly without the model in order to do forecast. And I'm pretty sure for a couple of things that will work perfectly. But I have in my opinion, it's completely clear that the role of the numerical weather prediction model, it will remain, okay, and the role of the reanalysis as well, because you can fill many of the unknown space by a physical law, and that helps a lot to generate information, and of course something maybe you can do directly with machine learning, but in my opinion it will not disappear. It will be more a hybrid world where also in particular, if you talk with people that do research and they want to understand why this heavy precipitation event, how they organized, and what really the details and how much of energy are transferred in one or the other direction. So these study they still rely completely on high resolution numerical modeling, on even large eddy simulations that will pop up more and more. And I think we need to try to explain that we need not only the observation, but we need a tool that is somehow bringing together all the observation into one physically consistent data set. And that can be used for analysis study. They can be used to learn a numerical model, to improve the numerical model, or to learn an ML model. On the other hand, of course, there will be ML models that will go directly from observation. I think one quite interesting, for me, an interesting example is we had a collaboration together with the aviation. And so it's a wind forecast at the end of the runway. And so it's only going for the next 2 hours, okay? But I was pretty convinced that for at least the second hour, you need our numerical model in doing that. And then the people developed it using the model output and only the direct observation. So it turned out that if you use observations all around Switzerland, not only in Switzerland, okay, so you use observations in Europe, so you can do the runway ML forecast that is running now. It doesn't need the model. It takes directly all the pressure observation and soundings around Switzerland, and that's okay to do a 2-hour forecast for the wind at the runway. So I think there is no answer in one or the other direction. There will be forecasts that will not need an analysis system in between, but in my opinion, the need for a reanalysis, it's completely clear. It will remain. And in fact, I hope very much that the Weather Service will invest in that, because it will be one of the fantastic data set for many, many applications. And the quality of this data set depends on how good we understand all the turbulence problem and the parameterization. And there are so many open questions there which are tackled at the universities. And if you benefit in better understanding that, in better simulating that, so this data set can be reprocessed and you have just a much better basic data set again. So in my opinion, it's not against one or the other. So we will need both. And I hope that the politicians that do the funding for that will also understand that we need both.
I think you've just given a great exposition, and I would agree absolutely with what you said. But it is a challenge because, in a sense, we're not only having to maintain physics-based numerical weather prediction, but also machine learning models at the same time. So that's an additional responsibility and activity that, of course, needs resources, and so that's a management issue for your successor, I suspect.
I guess so, and I think one of the things is that if we do good collaborations across the different Met services, that will help as well. So we need to do that. We need to really look that we can join the resources together in order to realize it.
When you talk about your partnerships, like with ETH, and we've kind of learned a bit about the benefit to MeteoSwiss, and can you talk a little bit about the other side, so the benefit to the academic community, because it's clearly there's an opportunity.
That's actually true, and that's one of the very fantastic thing working here in Zurich. Okay, so so the most and most striking example is actually that we generate the climate scenario for Switzerland. We do them together with the ETH. So, and we have a Center for Climate System Modeling that is jointly between ETH, us, and some other partners in Switzerland. And it turned out that this collaboration between the academia and the Met service, it somehow is a win-win for both. Because for us, we get access to the high resolution model, and of course through the ETH to the supercomputing, to the high resolution climate modeling, to the competence on how you do the statistic and Bayesian statistic on generating scenarios. On the other hand, ETH learns that how you need to formulate and to have to organize your climate scenario in such a way that they are used afterwards by the community and are used by the administration as well. So all the different offices, the idea was that they all use the same Swiss climate scenarios. So in order that we can really have an intercomparison on the different applications and on the different sectors. And we've done that the first time in 2011. And that was a huge project to bring the Met service together with the ETH to do and work together and release a report, questions who is the lead author, etc. And we've repeated that in 18 and now in 25 just last year. And it was just, both parties were extremely happy because it was a benefit for us. It was also a benefit for the supercomputing center because they could show that what they do actually ends up on the table of the politics. We were completely coverage in press. We had all the television station from Switzerland. So this is one of the things that working much closer together. It's not only science and it's not only technology that you win. You win some, if you like, trust in the population and in the society, and it's trust in the politics because they hear, MeteoSwiss and ETH, these are the scenarios. They both say that's the way that we should plan. And this trust, I mean, this is an issue for ML as well, but in general, I mean, this trust is extremely important because you need to have the trust of the population so that they act and decide afterwards to do something in one or the other direction.
Can I just follow up on that a little bit? Because we understand that the climate of Switzerland is changing faster than most of the rest of Europe. And we're already seeing the impacts, and they're pretty significant in terms of rockfalls and other things happening and losing whole villages and so forth. So perhaps you could just delve a little bit more into how the climate information is actually being used and how, you know, it's an important tool. How is society making use of it?
So I mean, I think one of the key point is that we were able to generate a common climate scenario that has different version of it, but it is that climate scenario for Switzerland, and that helped the administration for the different federal offices for environment and the energy. So they used then all the same scenarios, and that allowed us to have an intercomparison and discussion. Because if you don't have that, then each field is using a different scenario, or each field is using a different forecast. This is another issue that we can come back to as well. So then it makes it extremely difficult to find a common sense. So one of the key is that we were able to have scenarios that are accepted by everybody, by the research, by the administration, by the public, by the private sectors. And we, as ETH and MeteoSwiss, our goal is actually to provide this basic climate information. And then if you want to do a study on a ski resort, how the future looks like and what they need to do with their slope, etc. So that one is then more on the private sector. So that one is not the role of MeteoSwiss. So for this, there are other partners around in Switzerland that can do then the details. So we understand us as the one that is providing the basic climate information that is somehow labeled as the administration source, and in this sense has the trust from the society.
Can we just look into the crystal ball of what the future holds, Christof? And I guess how do you see the evolution of the weather enterprise as a whole, and perhaps also MeteoSwiss going forward, from your vantage point of being involved for so many years in this business?
I think, I guess you ask a little bit in terms of ML development. I think the first point is that the requirements that come from society and from insurance companies and from the different federal offices. So at least when I was director at MeteoSwiss, so we had a lot of requests. Can you do that? Could we have more information here? And it's clear a part of that is commercial activity, and you better do that with a commercial activity. But if you just think about how much more people want to know about weather and how much more information they require, so there is a lot of new demands that MeteoSwiss needs to deal with. And just doing that in a way as we have worked 10 years ago or 20 years ago, it's just impossible to do. So if you think about 20 years ago, we were issuing forecasts for regions in Switzerland. They were completely manual written, that's it. But today we have, during such an event like a heavy precipitation event in southern Switzerland, we have, 2 million people in Switzerland looking to our app. And it's just absolutely impossible if there is any manual working between, because it just wouldn't scale. So that means I think all these technical developments, and in particular KI and ML, will help us to fulfill these requirements, to be much more automatic and to respond in a much faster way to what people ask for. And I think this is one of the interesting things. And the second interesting thing for a Met service, I think for a Met service, the machine learning has the potential to make the operation easier. You need to reorganize your operation, but it's cheaper. And if I'm looking to the HPC, for example, so we have 2 machines for running our numerical model. And that's quite expensive because we need to have a BCM solution. If one is not working, the other one needs to run. And if that one would be on an ML-based model, that would be much smaller and it would be less expensive in terms of computer power, just for the operation. But we would need to have more computer power on the side of learning, but that one has less requirements in terms of safety and of reliability and of BCM. So I think there I see quite the potential that ML can somehow make this operational life and this reliable product life from the Met services a little bit easier. So that is one point. Okay. And one point that I also thinking about is people, if you ask a weather forecast on your local place, so the company that is providing that information, that knows everything about you. It knows where you are walking and it knows where you're in holiday, etc. And one quite interesting idea actually would be to say, but if we have an ML model on a very local scale, so basically you could run this ML model on your handy and you wouldn't need to give your exact position. So you could somehow keep your privacy and still have a very high local forecast that only your handy knows where you exactly are.
so really a personalized weather forecast.
Yes.
And another feature of that would be that on your own smartphone you can have all your personal details, like what your requirements are, what vulnerabilities do you have, are you disabled, do you live in a basement, do you know all of those things which change the risk for you of any particular event. So it's really quite an exciting area, really.
It's an exciting area, and I think the data privacy is there a key issue. Okay, so if you have to give everything to commercial companies or even to the government, so I mean, at least ML has the potential that you could somehow solve the privacy issue differently than today. Let's say it like this.
Yes.
One area that we're very interested in is how Met services like MeteoSwiss can help create opportunities in the developing world, and with Met services in the developing world, and a number of things you've said today are very interesting from the point of view of many are looking at how to utilize machine learning, and for several reasons. One is not having that many people to work in the meteorological service, so you need to be very efficient, and just new opportunities to run more efficiently, as you already mentioned. Can you just sort of say something about how you think MeteoSwiss or institutions like MeteoSwiss can play even more of a role than you currently do?
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree. I mean, there is if you look around on the globe, it's clear there's a lot of need for better forecasts, not only in the developed world, but in the least developed worlds in particular. And MeteoSwiss is quite involved in a couple of projects where we approach a so-called twinning. So that means that we try to build up the Met service in these least developed countries in order that they're able to have their own structure. And what I've learned during my period there is that this twinning approach is actually very successful because you're not only bring a product that then can be used and is used for a year and then it stops. So it's much more bringing the competence and the structure and building up the structure, so in order that they can work by themselves afterwards better. And of course, ML has the opportunity that as long as you not need the resource for learning, so you could somehow use an existing machine learning model, and Norway has done that and others have done that in order to implement that and try to get people from other Met service involved. And I think it's a huge challenge. On the other hand, one of the things that is always very important for a Met service, or at least for MeteoSwiss or European Met services, so you're still the official Met service. Your official voice has weight, and this is important and needs to stay like this. And this is somehow a little bit a danger if too many different ML model pops up and each tells itself, "Oh, we are the best in." And maybe it is true in this particular case, or in this particular case, or on that particular parameter. But as a Met service, you need to invest into the trust that the public is trusting you. I mean, in particular, if you rethink on Blatten, on this event that we had in the Valley, on the landslide that was coming down. I mean, the really interesting, or the really thing that I'm very proud of for Switzerland is that the people in the village, they believe the science and the administration. They were leaving the village. And I mean, there was one tragic example, but the other ones, they were leaving, and a lot of life were saved by this trust. And I think very similar, this trust is very, very similar in the meta service. And we need to be very careful that we not, by too many ML or uncoordinated ML forecasting, that we are going to lose this trust, that just ML can do it anyway. I think it's not true. It's not true. So you will need an organization that is looking very carefully on what is now to be decided, and then how is it communicated to the public, and how is it make sure that the public understands and acts, and really acts, and is somehow trusting that they should act now. And that needs to be one of the issues that we need to be careful with ML as well.
This has come out a lot in...
Just follow up on this a little bit, because one thing that's very interesting is the lack of knowledge amongst developing country Met services in what is machine learning, and so they're not a good customer for it, so they can easily be fooled into thinking it's a magic potion. But you're also, with online resources that you're making available, you have the tools now to help provide that kind of training. So it's a very low cost way of increasing knowledge of many potential future users of the technologies. Can you just talk a little bit about, is there more thought going into that?
I mean, I've been involved in the WMO as well, and we had this conference on AI in Abu Dhabi, and this was in particular their topic as well. And I think WMO plays here a key role as well. So in order to organize in the different regions these workshops that people can learn, and I mean, the classical way how the WMO is organized and how the Met service is organized, it will not change with ML. So the point is ML will pop on, and we need to make clear what can be done with ML and what cannot be done with ML. And of course, it has a huge potential, but it will not eliminate many of the other structures, and it will not eliminate the way that you still need resources to run it, and you still need to distribute and communicate to your society and to your population. And I think there WMO is doing a great job, and MeteoSwiss is involved in that, and we have a couple of projects where we help to improve this activity. And the second point maybe is that, and this is going also to the least developed countries, we need to make sure that the observation are available globally, and here WMO again plays a key role. I mean, ML without observation, without data, is not possible. So, and these data, they are all coming from the Met Service, and Met Service are only able to generate these observations if they are able to function and if they are funded in doing it. And there, again, WMO has some fantastic projects that try to fund with the World Bank the missing data structure at the ground.
We've mentioned in this discussion trust. You've used the word trust a lot, which is good, of course. And through our series on the WeatherPod on AI, we've returned again and again to this trustworthiness question. I guess one of the things I would say, and I'd be interested in your reaction to this, one of the huge advantages of the way that we have been doing numerical weather prediction using physics is that it inherently has the trust that we're using established laws of physics that are applied in so many different ways, and the public can believe and have trust because it is science-based. Meteorology is science-based. One of my concerns is that as we go into the ML world more and more, we lose that thread back to the science and the trust that provides. And I'd be interested in your quick thought on that kind of analysis.
Yeah, I mean, things can change quite fast. Okay, and it sometimes in the moment it looks like that this KI or ML based forecasting will eliminate the other part of the forecast, but I'm not so sure, because people will realize and it's not the root mean square that needs to be optimized. Okay, so that is clear who is winning that, and it's clear that if you optimize a learning process that you will win this particular parameter. But the story will then be important. What happens with the next big event? What happens with the next thunderstorm event in southern Switzerland, where tons of roads are floated away, and then, yeah, is then the ML model, was it able, or was then the physical model even? We will see, and I think this is really an open question. So I'm not so convinced that ML will just eliminate the other developments we have done.
There are two questions there, really. Can the ML do it? And the second thing is, do we believe it? So if a forecast of the ML model produces a very unusual, say it produced a very unusual thunderstorm event that we, would we believe it? And, would we have confidence to inform the public about that? Whereas with a traditional physics-based model, we can have confidence because we know at least we feel we know the laws of physics pretty well, and that's all that's in there. So
that's true. So in the physical model, the answer can be physical in a certain sense. We can say, okay, we have the parameterization of that and that particular process. With the ML, I think the thing that we need is the competence of the Met service to know what ML can and what ML cannot. And this is in particular one of the reasons why it is extremely important that the Met service are in that development of the ML forecasting as well, and not only the big tech companies, because the trust is going through the Met service, and the trust needs to have a long-term development and a long-term understanding of what your data source is. And in this sense, it's absolutely key that the Met service understand what ML can and what ML cannot. And we will see. We will see what's coming out.
Indeed. And I think we need to wrap up this very interesting conversation. And Christof, many thanks for joining us on the WeatherPod today. And we've learnt a lot about many things, but including MeteoSwiss, which is a really excellent Met service. And it's clear that you've brought such a lot to it to develop it over your time as the director. So well done on that. And thank you from my side for taking part in our WeatherPod episode.
Thanks very much, Christof. That was really, really interesting. And thank you. And I hopefully we'll have further interactions with you as you enjoy your new role in life.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to talk with you. Thanks a lot for all the interesting discussion. I mean, I think we had a really good discussion. I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Well, that concludes this latest episode of the WeatherPod. We hope you've enjoyed it. David and I will be back in the near future, and in the meantime, please give us your feedback.